Hi everyone, just before we get into this episode of Type 1 I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you so much for pressing play. I really hope you enjoy this episode. If you do, don't forget to hit subscribe and you'll be notified when new episodes come about. You can find us across podcast land on Spotify, iTunes, all those good places as well. Secondly, anything you hear on this podcast should not be taken as medical advice. I am, of course, not a professional, and you do need to seek advice from your healthcare team before making any changes to your diabetes management. And lastly, if you want to say hello, I do have an Instagram page specifically for the Type 1 podcast. You can find it at Studio Type 1. That's at Studio Type 1, the number, on 1, the number. And you can also come and say hello and follow me on my personal page, which is at Miss Jane Grieves. And all of that will be noted in the episode description. Hi everyone, and welcome to Type 1, a podcast that delves into the obscure, complex and challenging world of life with Type 1 diabetes. I'm Jane Grieves, and each week, with the help of some brilliant guests, I'll be showing that there is no normal when it comes to handling this whopper of a chronic condition, because we're all pretty much figuring out the messiness of day-to-day life with diabetes as we go. And most of all, even though it doesn't always feel like it, we are absolutely not alone. My guest today is Jane Pearman, founder and chief executive of Hypo Hounds. Hypo Hounds is a diabetic alert assistance charity helping children with type 1 diabetes by training assistance dogs to not only detect hypos, but to fetch testing kits or even a bottle of Lucozade. Jane and her husband trained their first hypo dog, Scooby, to help their daughter Sophie after she was diagnosed with brittle type 1 diabetes, as well as other major health complications at the age of 9. They didn't know it at the time, but Scooby would inspire the journey to founding Hypo Hounds, which has now trained 54 dogs to date, reducing hospital admissions and giving children and their families much needed independence and relief from the burden of living with type 1 diabetes. Hello, Jane. Welcome to Type 1.
Hi, lovely to be here.
Thank you so much for joining me. I mean, that is just a snapshot of the work you're doing, but it's so incredible, and I'm really looking forward to getting into this and how you're helping children and families in this way, because it sort of speaks to the physical aspects but also the emotional burden, right?
Yeah, very much so. It's not only the clinical side, but it's the mental well-being of everybody that is affected by type 1 in the family, from parents to also grandparents and siblings as well, that we forget about.
Yeah. And how does it make you feel to know, having started, from that one dog that you trained, to know that you're helping so many children and families, as you say, their wider families in this way? Do you get a chance to reflect on that at all?
No, I don't really have time. It's only when we have like our big awards night once a year, and it's all a big celebration of the children's success and the family success, that I actually sit back and go, whoa. Actually, what we've created is something very, very special, and it's a family feel.
Yeah, how fantastic. I'm sure it's a lot of work, but ultimately hugely rewarding.
Yeah.
Yeah, incredible. I would like to start from the beginning, if that's okay, because you have come such a long way and the charity has expanded, I'm sure, in ways that you couldn't have thought of back then. So do you mind telling me a little bit about the very challenging experiences that you went through yourself and with Sophie in the period leading up to this idea?
Yeah, I mean, Sophie was diagnosed at the age of 9 with type 1 diabetes. And like many children with type 1 and adults, she has other health issues as well. She had a bleed on the brain. She was born prematurely and has got a VP shunt, which puts her spinal fluid around her brain for her mechanically, and also spina bifida. And with Sophie, hypo treatment didn't really work. And she would go into a hypo with absolutely no warning. She would have no fizzy legs, no shaking or anything. And for us as parents, 1 minute we'd be in the kitchen, we'd turn around, she'd be on the floor. And for us, the fear was that, having had 9 brain operations already, if she hit her head, it would be, well, it just doesn't bear thinking about. So we started looking into ways that we could help her, because at that particular time, the pumps, and there was no Libra or anything like that. So we started having a bit of a research really about how we could be proactive in her care, but also look after ourselves, because at the time I was a police officer. I was working 12-hour shifts and then coming home, and I was a carer for her, and we were working one on, one off to facilitate that care for her. And I'll be completely honest, I was burning out. And as a family, we were burning out. So it was a case of, right, we need to take the bull by the horns. It's do or die, pardon the pun, but it was a case of we need to do something proactive. Otherwise, everything's just going to fall apart. So hubby's a police dog trainer, and a friend of his, funny enough, sent me a book about a little girl in America. And obviously service dogs are huge out there. We are so behind the times when it comes to animal assisted therapy over in the UK. And I read the book and I thought, do you know what? I've got the leads, I've got the contacts. We've got 3 police dogs at home anyway. What's another one going to... So I set out on the journey and picked up Scooby, a little Labrador puppy who we just fell in love with straight away. And by the time he was 12 weeks old, he woke us up in the middle of the night when Sophie was going into a hypo. And yeah, for us, it was like, okay, this is big. But we had absolutely no intention of starting a charity at all. It was, we're looking after our daughter. We've done something proactive. Brilliant. Everything in life is starting to look a little bit better. And a friend nominated him for the Crufts Friends for Life Award back in 2016. And the publicity surrounding that with the BBC and the filming, we got inundated with parents just like us wanting to do something proactive. Parents wanted to take the bull by the horns and say, actually, I need to do something for my child. So the seed was planted, shall we say, of starting a charity. Let's say at the time I was a police officer and we just didn't have the time. But things happen for a reason. I was involved in a very nasty road traffic accident and was medically retired from the police, which was then another huge light bulb moment, actually. I need to do something for my own mental well-being. I'm not one of these people that would sort of sit on my laurels and do nothing. So Hypo Hounds was born.
The sequence of events there, you are so well placed to do this, but it's one thing to be well placed, well positioned, and with the experience that you had, and another to take it upon yourselves to do this work on behalf of more than just yourselves. What was the motivation? What did sort of make you decide, okay, we're going to do this? And what did you find in terms of the realities of starting the charity?
Yeah, it was difficult. It was really difficult. There's lots of sort of legal loopholes you have to jump through. We were very lucky. We got the support from a diabetic centre who heard our story and supported me and Sophie on the beginning of the journey of Hypo Hounds, and for which we will be eternally grateful to them for. But for me, it was, I don't want any mum or dad to go through the hell that I went through. The clinical side, Sophie always got the amazing support, but we were always forgotten and we didn't ever like to ask for help. And it was really difficult. It was really difficult because you get 20 minutes with your DSN with a child, maybe, if you're lucky. And it's one in, one out. They focus on them, which rightly so, they should be focusing. But sometimes the parents and the caregivers, husbands and wives of type 1 diabetics, are left on the outskirts. So for me, it was I don't want anyone else to feel how I ever felt.
Yeah, thank you for articulating that. I can imagine that so many parents are just completely with you in that. Just with the day-to-day of managing the condition alongside all the other demands of life, let alone these extra pressures and concerns and considerations that you were facing, what was that first experience like when Scooby did come in and alert you? And what was the relief like as he trained more and as he became equipped to take some of that weight from you. What was that like for you
It
as
was
as
like
a mother?
someone had waved a magic wand. It really was. And there was a lot of people, my own father was a bit like, oh, this is a load of rubbish. And it wasn't until he saw it himself, and it was like a light bulb moment for many people. A lot of people, even now, go, oh, dogs can't do that. But when they see it in action, they see the children interacting with the dogs. A lot of the children are quite shy. They don't want to talk about things, but they will happily talk about their dog, and they come out their shell. The interaction between the dog and the dog became the caregiver. So for me, it removed a huge amount of conflict, especially when Sophie went through those dreadful teenage stages when, as all type 1 children, they go through it and rebel, and it's completely normal for them to
I
do
don't know
it.
what you're talking about.
It's completely normal. And, parents, we are like hitting our heads against a brick wall. And no matter how many times I'd ask her to test her bloods, I got the Kevin the teenager response. But if Scooby asked her, it was totally different. So he became the caregiver. I could be mum again. But more importantly, he gave me the ability to be a mum again to my son, who often got left out. Because he always used to see, because of Sophie's other health conditions, I used to have to bribe her because she used to have some really horrible tests done that were not related to the type 1 diabetes. And so he always used to think, she's been taken out for the day. She's gone to TGI Friday. She's gone to the Disney shop. That's what happens, sadly. There's only so much of you can give, but Scooby did. He enabled me to be able to be a mum again, a wife again, and be me, give me something, my identity back again.
How absolutely priceless. I would love to know a little bit about what the hounds themselves do. You mentioned they're asking Sophie to test her blood sugar. That took me by surprise. Like, I'm completely unawares of this, I'll admit. So I'd love for you to describe for me, the Lucozade and all these things.
So all of the dogs that we have, they're all diabetes for everyone is different. It's not in a book. Everyone's unique, as you know. So everyone's ranges are going to be different, but we all know that 4 or below is a hypo. But a lot of our child clients, they actually want the warning to be early. So for example, Scooby and now Dori, Sophie's alert is actually at 5.5 because she's got brittle type 1. She doesn't want to collapse. So Scooby will do the alert. He used to do the alert by doing a woof. But every dog is different, and it's all tailored to the individual needs of the family. So then, being a teenager, if he was to do a high five, Sophie could push him away and I wouldn't know. But he wasn't a barky dog. So if he did one woof, I would automatically be like, something's going on upstairs. What's going on? Run up the stairs. And there he would be doing a high five. Sometimes he would be dropping the kit literally at her feet when she was on manual injections to say, come on, you need to do your bloods. Also, she's now living independently. She's grown up now. She's 22 now and just bought her first house. And the dogs are trained. I know, it's scary.
Yeah.
Her life's in Dori's paws now, literally.
Right.
But Dori's alerts now. Sophie's in a school setting. She's a teaching assistant, so she wants something not as intrusive as a woof. So Dori, bless her heart, if she was here now, if she was doing alert, you'd just see this head going, ching. She does a jumping up. And it's only for when Sophie's going low. So if she's on a Zoom or she's teaching, if Dori starts doing this, almost like Zebedeeing, the kids are like, Miss, you need to do your bloods.
Oh, that's wonderful. I really like that idea of it opening up conversations as well.
Yeah.
Has that been a part of what you've witnessed with the children, with the people they come into contact with the dog, and even to raise awareness to people outside of type 1 diabetes, dogs at the park, interacting with their owners interacting with each other, things like that.
Yeah. I mean, we've had examples of our children. One of them went to a boot fair in the summertime, and there was a stall with some jam, and someone said, oh, diabetic alert dog, you shouldn't be eating this because you're diabetic. But the little girl turned around and went, actually, I think it's a little bit different to what you've maybe got, because my dog does this for me because I've got type 1.
Right.
And these kids are normally quite shy, quite reserved, but they will talk about their dogs to anybody. And they're really proud of them because they're their best friends.
Oh, this is amazing. I can't imagine what it's been like to go on this journey. What are some of the more challenging aspects of this in terms of, as you said, I think the perception of what a dog can do, and saying that we're quite behind versus the US. How has it been in terms of shifting mindsets that this can help?
I mean, most of our funding comes from corporates, and they find it really difficult to get their head around everything. We can show videos, we can invite them into our training centre to actually watch the dogs in action, but a lot of them are still very, oh, no. We went to the diabetic conference at Olympia, the DPC, and there were many, even healthcare professionals, that were like, no, this can't happen. When we've got the data from our children where some have had lots of hospital admissions before having a dog. And actually, how many have they had since it's been placed with you? None. How many?
Wow.
How many admissions? The proof's really in the pudding. But yeah, it's been really difficult to try and articulate how dogs can help children. And we can measure the clinical side, obviously, with the data that we have. But the one thing that everyone knows about is how animals can improve mental well-being. But that's the one thing that we can't measure. And to be honest with you, is just as important. It really is. But that's
Yeah.
the one side that the companies do come on board with and say, actually, yeah, we can recognise that, but we still can't get our heads around how good these dogs can sniff.
And what is it that prevents people from being able to take that leap of faith? It's not even faith, as you say, you've got the evidence to back it up. What do you think is that disconnect?
I think it's education. I think a lot of the talks that we do, people are still always putting type 1 in the same box as type 2. And we have to do a lot of education talks in the community. A lot of us, one of the things that we worked with in the past was fixing dad, for example, with the type 2 diabetes. People, I think we are getting better as a nation when it comes to animal assisted therapy. But yeah, a lot of people like the proof in the pudding.
Yeah, understandably. But I mean, the police dog service is rightly very well regarded and very well respected. It's interesting how this seems so different, but
Yeah, I think it's the science behind it all, because a lot of the clinicians are like, what are they smelling then, for example? So the studies that were done over in America showed that there was a higher increase in the chemical isoprene in your breath when you go low. So everyone has got isoprene in their breath, but a higher concentrate. So we know now that that's the chemical that the dogs are picking up on, and we target the training for that. When you do first aid training, everyone talks about if you see someone that's appearing drunk, if they smell a pear drops, then they could be high. And obviously then we know that that's what the dogs are picking up on. And the dogs have got 300 million scent receptors in their noses. We've only got 6.
really,
We've got 6
wow.
million. Yeah, and if we put that into layman's terms, that's 2 teaspoonfuls of sugar that a dog can smell in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. So when we
Wow.
explain things in that way to the general public, people are like, okay, yeah, I can get it now. We can train dogs to find bombs. We can find them to train narcotics and firearms and people and other diseases. When we talk about the chemicals and say, it's when their noses are so good, there's no reason why they can't detect this. And they are.
Would you mind explaining to me, as someone who admittedly also isn't so aware, what brittle type 1 is and how specifically it differs to type 1 diabetes?
Yeah, so brittle type 1 is different to normal type 1. Well, there's no such thing as a normal type 1 because everyone's so different, aren't they?
Right.
But brittle type 1 is where they have absolutely no awareness at all. They don't get the fizzy legs, the tingling of the fingers. Some say that their jaws ache, don't they? They get nothing. So it is literally collapsing on a monthly basis.
Wow. And I can imagine, as you say, before the tech came into the picture, which is very recent in
Mm,
relative terms, this for you was constant
yeah,
vigilance night and day. Is
it
that right?
was. I was absolutely petrified. I was, hand on heart, your DSNs will say, you don't have to look after them during the night. If they're going to hypo, it will sort themselves out. I wasn't prepared to take that risk. And I know many other parents feel the same way as me. It's almost like not on my watch. This isn't going to happen. So you do.
Yeah.
I was testing Sophie's bloods every hour of the night to the point where I had a bed in her bedroom, and it's not healthy. It's not healthy. Albeit our dogs don't work of a night time because they're not nocturnal. Just that peace of mind working alongside the tech that if the tech beeps and you might sleep through it, that will wake the dog up.
Yeah.
So it's working together with the tech, really. During the day, we've got a lot of our dogs are beating them by 15 minutes.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah,
So how has that evolved as the access to the tech has evolved and become more available? How has the work that the dogs are doing evolved to kind of, as you say, work alongside this
yeah.
technology?
Yeah, we're never going to replace technology. But we like working alongside Freestyle and Dexcom. We've got a really lovely relationship with them. You can't cuddle your pump. You can't. You can put funky stickers on it. You could name it something, but I'm sorry, you can't cuddle it. And there are days when technology does go wrong. You do get your kinked cannulas. You do get the Libras falling off. You the dogs work alongside as a complete holistic package, if you like, for the whole family of diabetic care. So technology is going to evolve, but there's always going to be a space for a hypo hound in a child's life, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And what have you witnessed? Can you talk to me about some of the early memories in terms of seeing that in front of your eyes, how a hypohound kind of bridges these very difficult things that you're facing day to day, and not only the condition itself, but how you communicate that with your family. Us as people living with type 1s don't always want to talk about it. And, when it comes to children, you just want to be normal and go out and play and things like that. So what have you witnessed in terms of the dog being that kind of that glue and also that bridge to facilitate more conversation, more love, more joy
Yeah,
ultimately, and more freedom for a child and their family?
that's right. And in inclusivity, for example, we've had a lot of children that weren't able to take part in after school activities because the parents might have been working. Sophie used to get excluded from things because clubs didn't want to take on the responsibility. Um, with Scooby, they could. She used to do trampolining and Scooby used to sit at the side. The coach knew he woofs, there's a problem. And it worked perfectly. We've got little Thomas with Poppy. He's currently being scouted by football clubs. Bless him. He's only 5 or 6. He's absolutely amazing. But he'll be
Wow.
playing football, and before he would have to miss out on the whole session because his bloods would drop, and he's almost resistant to his hypo treatment, and it would take a good half hour for his bloods to come up, which meant that he would miss out on the whole coaching session. But now little Poppy does the alert. He runs by, mum shoves some jelly babies in, and he's off because he's actually not gone low because Poppy's caught it at that rage where he's just starting. So mum just tops him up and away he goes.
Wow. And there is such a difference as someone living with type 1 between catching that hypo and being in the depths of it and having to wait to come back up, like
Yeah,
that. And I don't really have symptoms anymore, but in terms of my capabilities to think or move forward, I think that does have a ramification. There is a big consequence. So for a dog to be able to catch that before it gets to that point, that must be incredible. And
yeah,
specifically in the situation where a child is doing the thing that they're skilled at, that they enjoy, that brings them life and light, that is wonderful.
exactly. And
um,
they should be doing sport if that's what they want to do. There's no reason why children with type 1 diabetes shouldn't be doing sport.
yeah, how did you navigate those conversations? How have you found coaches and teachers and other caregivers in terms of having these discussions around what Sophie previously as a child, was able to do, and how did you find that?
Yeah, I mean, I've made some absolutely amazing friends because of it, and an amazing support network, and a lot of them have come on board as coaching and life coaching now for parents, because of using Sophie, if you like, as a guinea pig to get children into sport. But yeah, I was very lucky. Sophie had a one-to-one in school. So we were really, really blessed with that, and absolutely amazing. But it was the after-school clubs that I struggled with. But yeah, once I found someone that was willing to take it on and actually have a conversation, look, this is what Sophie's got, because obviously she does have other problems as well. It was almost like, oh my goodness, the world is her oyster now. She got graded as a para horse rider, and she took part in the Royal Windsor Horse Show 3 years ago and actually won it.
Wow.
And that was, horse riding things would have been a big no-no, but now that opened up another world to us, because her coach bred a litter of Labradors and became a breeder for us because they were so impressed of what our work was. So things happen for a reason, and I'm whenever things go down for us, I'm a big believer in there's another door that's going to open, and it has for us as a charity. Whenever something's knocked us down or Sophie's done, I can't do that, another door's opened with an even better opportunity.
Wonderful. And how has it been for you as mama, as Sophie's gained more independence and has gone on to achieve these incredible things? And now, as you say, living independently, she's got her career. Like, what's that been like for you to witness? I know it obviously happens slowly over the years, but, going from that time, which was understandably terrifying and exhausting for you. Talk to me a little bit about that, and also giving her that independence as well.
It was really hard. We've got a lot of our clients now that our children are going to be going off to college or university, and it was really difficult for me. I don't think I would have felt as positive as I did if it hadn't been for Scooby and now Dori, because I know that she's okay. She's got someone watching her back and taking on the role as a mum. She's got a very understanding boyfriend as well, who's absolutely amazing, which is fabulous. But yeah, I think without having a dog, I don't think I'd be having this conversation. I think we'd be having huge arguments and she'd still be at home. But I'm very, very proud of everything that she's achieved. And she's a fabulous ambassador for the charity and for the children. She still gets involved with the charity, and when we have away days, she gets involved with the kids, and they look up to her now as a bit of a role model to say, actually, if she can do it, we can too.
This episode of Type 1 is sponsored by Dexcom. I've been using the Dexcom continuous glucose monitor for years, and it's hard for me to express just how much of a difference it's made to my life as someone living with type 1 diabetes. Their CGM sensors give me the confidence to make informed treatment decisions in the moment, which is great for me as I'm often running around, and with just a quick glance I can see exactly where my glucose level is, where it's been, and where it's headed. So please take a look at Dexcom.com. They have a choice of systems, so you can find the right one for your lifestyle. Can you talk to me a little bit about the process of training a dog and what that's like, how long it takes? Yeah.
So we've changed. When we first started the charity up, it was all about your dog saving your child's life. But very quickly, I realised that not everyone was like me. A lot of people do struggle, albeit I struggle, but it depends on your makeup, if you like, of whether you're someone that is capable of sort of getting up and doing things, or whether you're a person that would actually rather just deal with your own little bubble. And although the dogs were really good at doing everything, the parents just couldn't commit to the training. So just before lockdown, as you do, we changed the whole setup of the charity, and we became very much like what guide dogs do, where we source the puppies, we own the dogs, and they're raised by puppy walkers for the first year, which mitigates a lot of the training that the parents have to do.
Right.
By the time the puppy's about 1 year old, we start to look at what families we've got on our books and what lifestyle would suit that particular dog. Because dogs they have their own character, what they like and what they don't like. And there's no point matching a high drive dog with a low drive family. So by the time they're about 1, we start matching them. That's when the children come to us for play dates. So the dog gets used to them in a nice, safe environment. And the children aren't then strangers, and neither are the family. After they've met a few times and they've come on a few training sessions, that's when we book a sleepover. So the dog goes for a sleepover with the children to make sure that the dog can settle in the house. And when they've had 2 sleepovers, that's when we sit down with the family and say, right, is it the one for you? And by 2 sleepovers, we'll know whether or not the dog's settling nicely, if there's any habits the dogs have or even the children might have that the dogs don't like, and vice versa. It's mutually, it's not just one way. From the charity's point of view, it's all about dog welfare and is it the right family for the dog? But also we have to speak to the parents, because we have had where parents have gone, actually, we love the dog, the kids love it, but it's not the right one for us. In which case, we have to reassess things. Sometimes a year might have gone by because it takes a long time to train these dogs. That particular child's needs might have now been superseded by another child's needs. They might actually go to the bottom of the queue, but there's always a space for everyone. But we're not diabetic or medical specialists at all, so we go by the clinical team. So when people are on our books, they have an annual review of their diabetes to make it fair for everyone that's applying.
And what's the criteria for being able to work with a Hypo Hound or obtain a Hypo Hound?
So for us, it is based on hospital admissions. It's based on how many hypos the child's having. It is a working dog. So if someone says to us, they only have 2 hypos a month, it's not really worth us training a dog to the tune of £25,000 for a dog that might only be worked, when there could be a family out there that's child. Even now, Sophie has a good 6 to 7 hypos a day. So, that's our ideal client, if you like. Any children under the age of 5, because they automatically don't have any awareness, being so tiny, they do get priority with us. And we've got a few babies on our list at the moment, which is absolutely heartbreaking. Yeah. But knowing that we might be able to help them and then them grow up, and we put them in good stead with their diabetic care. So when they do get to that awful teenage stage, hopefully they might not rebel as much.
And how does it work? Is there any connection between the charity and the dog and the child's diabetic care team?
Yeah, so we work really closely with them. Yeah, so we obviously get the medical forms signed by them. We're also really blessed to have as one of our trustees a diabetic specialist nurse. So if we've got any queries on applications, or maybe something's come up, if they can't get in contact with their diabetic specialist nurse, we've got one on board, which is absolutely amazing. And her speciality at the moment is dealing with mental well-being as well. So she's a huge advocate for mental well-being and the use of dogs to help mitigate that within the family setting.
Incredible. And what's the common challenge or difficulty that children and their families are facing that come to you with sort of in light of having the technology now? Is it the lack of symptoms? Is it the emotional load? A combination of things, I'm sure, but what is the thing that you see?
It is mainly the parents not having faith in the technology. That is the one thing that we have. There's an awful lot of scare stories out there, as everybody knows. Things do go wrong sometimes, but also, they also have a place. Sophie's life changed dramatically when she went onto a pump, but also when she goes on holiday, she prefers to have some time away from the pump as well. So, I think it's a complete lack of faith. And I think sometimes it's the education around the technology as well. The parents don't feel that they've had the support and they don't understand it fully. For us, that's a huge sort of problem, and that's something that hopefully we're going to be working with some of the big companies to do and put some support sessions in place for not only our clients, but in the broader scheme of things. We do Welfare Wednesday Zooms, which we open up to everybody. We're starting again in January, so if people want to come on board, and each week's a different topic. We have a specialist in each week, and it's open to everyone. Sometimes just to have a little bit of a rant and talk to people that understand.
And what's the biggest challenge for you as the founder, sort of taking on this work? And you hear a lot about these challenges. Is it, what do you find the hardest? That you want to do more, that you want to reach more people, or just the workload? Kind of talk to me about, as a charity founder, what you find.
I find really difficult is I want to save the world. Yeah, every parent that comes to me, I want to help. Yeah. But there are those that we can't. Maybe it's because of their lifestyle. Maybe it's just, the dynamics within the family. I find it really difficult to say no, and I find it really difficult to switch off as well, and not get emotionally involved. I'm a sucker for a sob story because I've been there and I understand how difficult it is. But then you do, unfortunately, get people taking advantage of that, which we've had quite a few times. And, there are times when we've had to say, right, enough. No, we can't do this anymore. And I find that really difficult. And I think when people are on a journey with us, it's all very well them, going through the applications, but when we say, actually, we can't because of this, people find rejection really difficult because they've been rejected a lot of times with all their support systems. And we're just a door that's closing, where we have to sometimes be very open and say, we can only do what we can do because we're a charity and we're very small and we've got very limited funds. It'd be lovely. My dream would be for any child with brittle type 1, if they came to us to have a dog. But sadly, life isn't like that. And we prioritise it on clinical need. So it is very black and white, but it has to be that way.
Yeah. And I mean, the work you have done and the people you have helped, that's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, we've had people saying, no, I'll write you out a check tomorrow if my child can have one of your dogs. And it's like, well, first of all, it doesn't sit very well with me ethically, but also, as a charity, we can't do that. And, it might be lovely for your child to have a dog, but actually there's a child X, for example, over here that needs one more than yours. So yeah, it's difficult. It really is.
And with that in mind, what's your sort of plans for the charity going forward, and what help would be useful for you moving forward?
Yeah, I think people going out and talking about us, that would really help. We're going into the world of corporate funding at the moment. We don't charge the families for what we do. They take on the insurance and the food and the veterinary care of the dogs once they're matched, but we don't charge them the £25,000 for the training of the dog and the ongoing training, because obviously diabetes changes. So, we might give a dog to an 8-year-old, but in 5 years' time, we've got to get that dog back in. So we see the dog 4 times a year and license it so that we're constantly on it. If there's any changes with the blood sugar levels, maybe the ratios need to be changed, we're on it. But yeah, we need people to go out and talk about us. We need people to go and talk about how amazing the dogs are. And you never know. There might be someone out there with £1 million that might go, do you know what? Have some money, and then you can train more dogs for more children.
Absolutely. Is there a time where you bring the families together at all? I know you mentioned the awards.
So we do. Yeah. We haven't done it this year, but we try and do a day where we take the children out for the day, and we have a sibling day. So we take the children and their siblings out. The parents have a psychology session, which is really nice. That's one thing that I think makes us kind of special, because the parents have some downtime to speak to a specialist. And the last one that we had, we took the children on the steam train, and it was 20 children, 20 dogs on a steam train. It was carnage.
In the best possible way.
I say don't work with children and animals, but my goodness, that was a day to remember. But yeah, the parents actually sat down, and for some of our clients actually turned around and said, that was the first time we've actually sat down as a couple and discussed how we feel about it. Because a lot of the time, stereotypically or not, the mother kind of takes on the nurturing role. And there was an awful lot of resentment in the room from the feedback afterwards, because the mums were saying, you're not getting involved, why aren't you getting involved? But the feedback came back where the dads were really scared of messing up, and then that impacting negatively on their marriage. But it was never being communicated between the two of them. The dads weren't talking to the mums weren't talking. They were thinking, oh, you're just leaving me to it, I'm exhausted. But the dads were actually scared. And those sessions are huge for us. So that was one. We're hopefully doing another one next year. But yeah, we have our big awards night as well. Once a year, we took our families on a trip to Hogwarts this year.
Oh, wow.
And it was all done like Hogwarts, and it's a celebration of success of the team. So we had the most improved dog, who's done the most fundraising, who's the volunteer of the year. It's all a bit of fun. But yeah, we took them on an amazing journey. Each year it's a different theme. So, and it's lovely for them because they actually sit with the foster parents of the dog that brought up their dog for them. So it was lovely for them to come and sit and meet the dog, meet their families. So we really are something quite special because it is a huge family.
Yeah, it really speaks to community. And as you spoke about the parents there, that like completely is what I've heard from the parents of children with type 1 that I've interviewed for the podcast, how the day-to-day of it and the demands of it really shifts the dynamic of a couple, of the whole family, but finding the space and the courage, because it's not easy to converse about feelings around this condition that isn't yours, but is such a big part of your life and impacts you so hugely. For you to facilitate that space, as well as the dogs and the children and all of that, like I think, as you described, so precious. But what I'm sensing here is this community, which in my experience and where any of the speaking I've done about type 1 has come from, is that there was a long time where I felt like it was just me. And you alluded to that earlier in yourself and what you were going through, that it was just you. And I sense that this must be a very strong bond that you all share, like everyone that's involved in the charity.
I think even conversations now are going on with other people. Our chairman John, that you've had a chat with, his type 1 diabetic, and when he came on board as a trustee, he went back to his mother and said, Mum, did you feel the way that Jane felt? Because I didn't. And she went, yes, but I never told you. So there's conversations that are happening as adult type 1s with their parents. And it is a grieving process. You grieve for the child that, especially Sophie was 9, so she was a little bit later. You grieve for the child that you had before, and you need to be able to process that. And especially John's obviously a lot older than Sophie. His parents were of the mindset of something, we don't ever talk about feelings and things like that. So even him having a conversation now with his parents, did you feel that way? Yes, I did. And actually, I still do.
Wow, yeah. And John is the reason we're speaking. He mentioned a little bit of his story to me and said that he didn't speak about his type 1 diabetes at all for 35 years until he found Hypo Hounds and started to work with you guys. So yeah, absolutely incredible.
We have like buddies, like our children have buddies. They have little mentors. They have little clubs, and it's so important. Everyone talks about mental health and talking. We don't talk enough about type 1 diabetes, and we don't encourage our children to be the brave warriors that they are and be proud of it and say, I've got this and I'm not ashamed of it. It's me.
Absolutely. And for those who are listening and are no doubt inspired to find out more, How can people support the work you're doing? Like, what are different ways that people can get involved?
Yep. Obviously, you can sponsor a dog. You can go to the website and sponsor a dog. What we really need at the moment is more volunteers. So we're opening hubs up all over the country. We can only open them if we've got a team of volunteers. So if, for example, we've got hubs in Hampshire, Berkshire, Reading, Essex, Sussex, Surrey. We've even got one in Northern Ireland now. But if there was a group of people that could get together and then do the village fates, become a talker for us, go into communities, talk at your local WI, raise awareness. Not only are they raising awareness of the charity, but they're also reaching out possibly to that one family that might benefit from us, and also maybe a funder, which would be really nice too.
Yeah. And what's been your proudest moment, if you have one?
Oh God, there's too many. There's too many. But I think for us at the moment, we've just won the Mental Wellbeing Awards for Kent for being mental wellbeing champions. So for a charity that actually didn't start out as mental wellbeing, it was about the assistance dog and the clinical needs, to actually be formally recognised by the Lord Lieutenant of Kent. And we were crowned champions in the whole of Kent for mental health services for children. That was huge. But we've also just found out we're finalists for the BQF Awards up at Wembley Arena next year. And that is huge. We're up against some huge businesses for doing amazing things with amazing people. So, yeah, every time we get a phone call saying, do you know what? The dog's done this today. It still gives me goosebumps now.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this so much. Have you found that as you're entering, awards and things and speaking to people outside of diabetes communities, what's the reaction when you tell people what the charity is and what it does and how it helps people? What's the kind of response you get from people who live outside of the type 1 diabetes bubble?
A lot of people didn't even know about type 1 in children. They hold their hands up because you always hear about diabetes on news. They never specified type 1. So it's all about education, but they are blown away, especially if we take a puppy with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine.
Yeah, if I do a networking event and I take a puppy, my goodness. Everyone wants
That's
to be
a very
involved.
good way to pique interest. Yeah, I can imagine. You're like, you don't want to know about type 1 diabetes, but here's a dog.
Yeah, you're going to learn. But it's getting them, because of the puppies, we're then being invited to go into the workplace. So we've got a lot of companies that sponsor our work, but not because of the link to type 1. They want a dog in their workplace to improve productivity and improve the mental well-being. It helps us with the socialization of our dogs. So it's kind of a winner-winner, really.
Love that. And what makes a good hypo hound, if there is such a thing as, does it differ?
Yeah, I mean, we're often talked about what breeds are best as well. So if I can put it in layman terms for you, your Springer Spaniel is your Ferrari of the scent detection world. They are amazing. However, they don't slow down. Your Labrador is your reliable Ford Mondeo. It's cheap to run.
I love it.
Family friendly. And everyone loves them and nice and comfortable. So, yeah, it is your Labradors. We want nice, steady, family-friendly dogs that are well socialised, behave impeccably. We don't want them to be robots. They are allowed to be naughty. When they're not on duty, they can go and roll in fox poo. They can do whatever they like. But the minute they put that uniform on, they're representing the charity and they know. And you can see by the whole body language of the dogs, they walk around like this with their uniforms on, looking all proud, almost looking at the other dogs to say, do you know what, I'm allowed to go in that restaurant, you're not.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Wow. And tell me about the joy that you personally get from interacting with these dogs, having these dogs in your life after retiring in very sudden circumstances. Speak to me a bit about your feelings about that.
Yeah, I'm a huge dog lover anyway. So yeah, the puppy days in the office. Now I'm in Norfolk. If I know that puppies are going to be in the office, I'm down there. I'm pulling rank. Yeah, all the dogs are named after Disney characters as well. So we have our pool of breeders that, we've got a Star Wars litter, for example. So we've got a little black Labrador called Vader. We've got an Obi-Wan Kenobi, a Yoda, Luke and Leia. And then I've got another breeder who is our Lion King. So we've got a Simba and Nala, Pumbaa and Timon. So it's all a bit of fun. Very serious, but it's all a bit of fun. But yeah, I absolutely love it. I'm living the dream. The only horrible thing is, when we have to say no sometimes. But other than that, I really am. It's a lovely job. It really is, and I'm very proud of it.
John told me you were incredible. That was his first sentence, and I
bless him.
He's not wrong. And how about your husband? What does he make of all this, and how involved is he with the charity?
Yeah, he's still working in the police, so he's busy with that. But yeah, he's very, very proud. Very proud.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
And where can people find you if they want to say hello or maybe ask some questions about Hypo Hounds? Yeah.
We're on all our socials. We've got Instagram, Hypo Hounds. We're on Facebook. I know that's a bit archaic now for some people.
No,
we are
hopefully still kicking.
Yeah, hopefully I think we're going to be starting in the realms of TikTok, because someone said, it'd be really lovely to see like the naughty side of the puppies.
Love that. Yeah.
So that'd be huge. But our website, hypohounds.co.uk. There's lots of information on there on how you can become involved as a volunteer, download a pack, or even if you think that we might be able to help you, the application forms are on there too. We're also at loads of events through the year. Come and visit. They're always on our socials where we're going to be. Come down and support us. Come and meet the team. Come and play with the puppies. Come and meet us.
Lovely. Yeah. I really like the in-person-ness of this, because, online communities are amazing, but the presence of a dog and seeing those families come together, I think it's something really special from what you've said. So I cannot thank you enough for talking to me.
No, thank you.
As you're in the midst of a house move and many other things. But thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
You.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Type 1 Please remember that nothing you hear on this podcast should be taken as medical advice. I'm definitely not a healthcare professional. If you like what you hear, hit subscribe and do leave a little review on iTunes if you have time. It really helps to spread the word about type 1 diabetes. And thank you so much for listening.